Welcome, everybody. You are tuning into the Ask Schellie Show. My name is Schellie Fanfan. I am your emotional intelligence expert. And we have been highlighting taking off the mask all month of March. This episode is specifically geared toward men. The mental health and the overall mental wellness of our men, whether you are in relationship with a man, whether it's a family member, we are talking about taking the mask off. And we are specifically focusing today on the fact that men wear masks too. Again, my name is Schellie Fanfan. I am your emotional intelligence expert. I'm a licensed psychotherapist here in the state of Florida. I have the privilege of working with corporations, providing psychoeducation that brings their corporations to peak performance. I have the privilege of working with individuals, with families, with married couples, and providing evidence-based therapeutic intervention that brings them to the other side of their breakthrough. Really using therapy and counseling and non-judgmental support and safety to assist people with addressing emotional injury and activating irreplaceable versions of themselves. And I have the privilege of being your host of the Ask Schellie Show, where we entertain questions, we highlight questions that our community has, and we hope that the answers and the feedback that they get from me and my expert guests and you all will bring them to another level of functioning. It is about assuring that your wellness toolbox is fully stocked. It is about having a wellness toolbox that is fully stocked. We desire to enhance your emotional intelligence altogether for yourself, for your children, for your loved ones. Emotional intelligence is key. If you are living and breathing and you desire for human beings to respond in a certain way, emotional intelligence is the key. We have our guest expert today. We have a guest expert joining us today. I'm going to be reading his bio in just a moment. Before I do that, for those of you who are just joining, you are tuning into the Ask Schellie Show. We have been focusing on removing the mask all month of March. We focus first on enhancements, how beauty enhancements can become mandatory for certain individuals, and really getting to a place where you can celebrate the true essence of who you are without those enhancements, and really just accept and understand that your imperfections are beautiful. And then we reran that show for the second week. Then we talked about five signs that you are a mask wearer. We reviewed 5 signs that you are a mask wearer. Just to quickly recap that, so to quickly recap that, we talked about your posts that are basically communicating messages and truths that are not necessarily true, right? And how we use social media to do that. We talked about using words in a very inauthentic way when we say things like, I'm good, it's okay, it's whatever, when that's not necessarily your true experience. We talked about suffering in silence. We talked about ineffective coping mechanisms, escape avoidant behavior. We talked about not being confident in the uniqueness and the true essence of who you are. Oh yeah, we're talking about taking the mask all the way off. And today we are highlighting on the fact that men wear masks too. So let me tell you about my bomb.com guest that's going to be joining me on the stage today. Let me pull up his bio. Ladies and gentlemen, who we have today is Adejare McMillan, who is a South Florida-based poet, author, and mental health therapist. He holds a Bachelor of Science degree in criminal justice, Master of Science degree in mental health counseling, and is currently in pursuit of a Doctor of Philosophy degree in marriage and family therapy at Nova Southeastern University. As a member and affiliate of several organizations dedicated to human rights and social justice, Adejare has spent several years actively engaged in community activism, advocacy, and organizing. In addition to being a transformative justice circle keeper and trainer in the practice, he is also a diversity and inclusion consultant. He is all the way bad. All the way bad, everybody. All the way. Woo! I've stalked him for weeks for this, by the way. Adejare is constantly seeking opportunities to educate, advocate, and grow awareness of mental health access, options, and opportunities, primarily for Black folks and other people of color. Adejare has dedicated his life to creating and curating spaces geared to advancing towards solutions for his community and those like his, influencing healing and to being of service when, where, and however he is able through the use of poetry, therapy, and TJ practices. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together, get those likes going, get those hearts going for our guest today, Adejare McMillan. Welcome to the stage. Hello.
Wow. What an introduction. Thank you so much.
How are you, King? How's everything going? Tell us a little bit more about you.
A little bit more. That was a long bio. I wrote that bio.
Let's go.
That was a lot.
Tell us what you do on your off time when you're not changing the world. What do you do? What is Adejare doing?
I'm probably posted up in my house, on my couch with a glass of wine and whatever show has the newest episode out on Hulu or Netflix. I'm a big fan of the medical shows, so The Resident, New Amsterdam, The Good Doctor, Nurses, so on and so forth. I like those shows. I'm a big fan of other helpers, people who help people. So, yeah.
And what's your wine of choice? So I know what to say.
Wine of choice, Cab Sauv all day.
All right, that's my favorite too. I like a good glass of Cab. That is that's some really good medicine. Thank you so much for joining us. Before we get started in our topic here, I just want to say hello to my guests. I see that we have Candy Bryan. She gives us her ways. Thank you so much for joining. Dawn Alexander. Hello. Thank you so much for joining, Queen.
Good morning,
and we have Tati Tina. Hi from Port Charlotte, Florida. Those of you who are watching, please go into the comments. Let us know who you are, where you are calling in from. There is a pinned comment. You can click on that link and join us right here on stage, and you can ask our guest expert your question directly. For those of you who are already on stage, if you would like to join live to ask your question, just go into the private chat and let me know that you are ready to ask your question. We will bring you on. You can hide your face. You can turn your camera off if you want. You can just go live with your camera on. That's all up to you. We are talking about men wear masks too. So before we get started, just hearing the topic and what your experiences have been, right? What your experience have been in your line of work as a therapist. When you hear men wear masks too, what comes to mind?
Yeah. I'm a Black man that lives in the United States of America. That's the very first thing that comes to mind. It's this idea that I probably don't know an existence without masks of some sort. And I would argue that for many other Black men, our experiences are probably the same or very similar in that regard. I thought about this idea that men wear masks too, and I thought about things like privilege and things like patriarchy. And I think I choose to think about that a lot because as a man living in this world, I have to recognize that I have some privileges, that there are some aspects of life where I get off a bit easier just due to the body that I was born into, right? However, I also recognize that there's duality in all things, and as in other things, even in my existence as a man, the duality of due to my race or due to my religion or due to my certain aspects of my outward presentation, I may or may not be able to be my fullest self depending upon the situation or circumstance I find myself in. And so while there is a certain freedom in being male, there is a certain, I guess, slack or a little bit more to the leash that comes with being a man. There are decisions and choices that I can make that maybe women may not be able to make. There are still some restrictions. I'm still Black. I would say I'm relatively young. I'm 31. I'll be 32 this year. So there's ageism that comes up. There's a host of different things that I talk about. Hearing the topic of the discussion, and yeah, I'm all over the map. So let me have it. Bring what you got.
All right, all right. So let me go over some things that I read. I want to say maybe it was about a week or two ago. And I'm just gonna say this. I'm gonna read this, and I'm gonna ask you what your thoughts are on how we can best address this. And then I'm gonna go into the question that was sent in for our highlight. So
Okay.
this is from the National Institute of Mental Health, and they write, while mental illnesses affect both men and women, the prevalence of mental illnesses in men is often lower than women. I don't know, maybe it's less reported, but let me just keep reading. And it says, men with mental illnesses are also less likely to have received mental health treatment than women in the past year. However, men are more likely to die by suicide than women, according to the Centers of Disease Control and Prevention. On Healthline, they write, according to the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, men die by suicide at a rate of 3.54% higher than women. And these are statistics that are specific to 2017. Mental Health America reports 6 million men are affected by depression in the United States every single year. The National Institute on Alcohol Abuse and Alcoholism puts the annual number of men dying due to alcohol-related causes at 62,000 compared to 26,000 women. And men are also 2 to 3 times more likely to misuse drugs than women. When you talk about this, especially this last one, depression and suicide are ranked as a leading cause of death among men, and yet they're still far less likely to seek mental health treatment than women. Your thoughts on that?
In some respects, the statistic is me. I am the statistic. First of all, before I go further, let me just say I lead with a certain amount of transparency, um, and with a certain amount of truth in the things that I say. And I want this to serve as a trigger warning, as an advance warning for anything that I may say, that I don't do it in the spirit of triggering anyone or unintentionally invoking anything unpleasant in anybody. I simply share my experience, the experience of a Black man who has experienced living in America. And that's purely what it is, for the sake of education and for the sake of spreading knowledge and awareness. Um, that being said, I am the statistic. I am a 30-year-old Black man living in this country who has dealt with, and in some respects still deals with, different aspects of mental illness. I was diagnosed with clinical depression maybe 4 years ago. As a therapist, by the way, I've been in the field for 6 years. So if 4 years ago I was diagnosed, what was I doing before then? Right? It's kind of concerning, but at the same time, I had to come to a reckoning in myself. I had to come to the realization that, like, I needed more help than I was able to give to myself, and that it's okay to ask help, and it's okay to be vulnerable and to say that I'm not able to do something that is hard, that is difficult, that many people struggle with, that people die over. We just heard the statistics. So we know that this isn't easy, right? When I hear those stats, what I think of is silence. I hear a lot. It's so strange. I hear a lot of deafening silence.
Wow.
In those numbers. Just taking into consideration the idea that these numbers are only approximations and they're as high as they are, to consider everyone who refused to report, or didn't have the opportunity, or maybe didn't have the access to report. people in rural areas that don't have access to these types of healthcare options. Maybe that there is no psychologist in the town that they live in, or one psychologist in the town that they live in, and they're overwhelmed. That there's such a myriad of issues that comes with addressing mental health problems. And then when you add the intersections of age and socioeconomic status and race and gender and religion, it's not surprising to me that there is underreporting. It's not surprising to me that the numbers are what they are, and it's certainly not surprising to me that when you look at specifically Black populations in regards to these statistics, you see an even bigger jump in these numbers
Of course.
across the board.
That is so good. You said in these statistics, you hear deafening silence. That is phenomenal, because you're right. These are just statistics. They're general and maybe not even close to accurate, right? So that just means that there's so much more that meets the eye, especially when you're talking about Black men and your experience as a Black male. I want to highlight this next question before we let you go, because we want to squeeze you for everything that you have, Those of you who are logging in, those of you who are tuning in live, you can go to that pinned comment and click on that link. You could join us live on stage. You can ask our guest speaker whatever question you have of him before he leaves the stage. I want to highlight this question for those of you who are tuning in. Please make sure that you are engaging. Go into the comment section. Let me know who you are, where you are tuning in from, and also provide your feedback for the writer, because our writers always come back. They always get so much value from what you are putting in those comments in the lives, during the replays. So feel free to share your experience and your thoughts as well. The question is, Dear Ask Schellie, I am a wife writing in a spirit of concern for my husband's well-being. I have watched your shows this month on removing the mask, and I have been waiting for your male guest speaker to talk about men and the masks they must wear. One of the primary concerns I have is this. I believe my husband is very depressed. He denies it and he says he is okay. He is a great father and tries his best as a husband, but I feel it. He has all of the classic signs: isolation, sleep disturbance, sexual appetite disturbances, moody, he does not do the things he loves, and more. It is crazy how he transforms. Listen, people. It is crazy how he transforms into a completely different person in front of family, especially church family. But before we even leave the parking lot after service, he goes back to being quiet and removed. He is wearing a mask, and I believe many men do. Every time I try to address it with him, he tells me that he is okay, and he even looks annoyed by the questions. Can you please ask your guest what I can do to help my husband break this cycle of depression? I'm passing the baton to you.
Yeah. Wow. Well, one thing that she can, and she asked a direct question, what's one thing that she can do to help break the cycle? And one thing that she can do is maybe stop asking him if he's depressed, or stop labeling him as depressed. People take that for granted, right? We take language for granted. I'm a narrative therapist by training, and so a lot of my work has to do with a person's particular narrative or dominant discourse, and the way in which they create and utilize these discourses to guide their life, right? And so immediately what I hear is this man is at a stage, regardless of what stage that may be, where he may not even identify with being depressed. It's not helpful to continue to place a label on someone that does not identify with that label. If anything, it could push him further away from wanting to address the issues that the label itself comes with. So immediately out of that vignette, what I hear, and that's how I would respond to that question. As far as the breaking the cycle bit, that's a little bit more difficult. Uh, um, but is anybody surprised to hear that he transforms? Is anybody even surprised to hear that that's the word that was used? Like, because honestly, I'm not. I'm not anymore. We're in the year 2021. We're in the United States. We live in a place where you can't run down the block portraying yourself in a certain way because you may be targeted. That's not a perception, that's reality.
Yes.
So is it surprising that anyone, male, female, or otherwise, would transform in order to meet the demands of their everyday life? I don't think so. It sounds to me like he's in a place that I was, and in some respects may still even be, which is in survival mode. You know, we're trying to make it. We're trying to get through, and then worse off than that, we're upholding the gender roles that we have been socialized into. So he's not going to show up and crumble in front of you and say, you know, I'm broken down, or that I need help, or that things are going on, because that's not the way that men are socialized to be. And further than that, that's definitely the way black men are socialized to be. We are not socialized to show up weak. We're not socialized to really ask for help. We're not socialized to show up and portray ourselves as incompetent or incapable. It's just, and it's partially it's because we come from a race of people that have had to make do with nothing, make a way out of no way.
Mm.
But what happens when you're not able to make a way? I don't think we ask that question enough. We have the expectation that, you know, that our mothers and our women are going to show up in our lives and be nurturing and be loving and be caring and compassionate and kind and all of these things. And you know, for a lot of black men, we have the expectation that they're going to show up and be strong and be great providers and wonderful fathers. And in a lot of respects, this is true, right? Especially around fatherhood, black men show up. 83% of households have active father in the roles in some respect
Wow.
in the household. But yeah, it's happening, but the expectations and the way in which they're held are held in such a way that it doesn't allow any room, it doesn't allow for any slack, it doesn't allow for bad days, it doesn't allow for emergency and crisis situations, which happen to everyone. They're not gender specific. So when I hear that question and that explanation from the caller, the first thing that I go to ask is, what happened?
Wow.
What happened to him? What happened to you? Whoever the writer. What happened to you? What has happened in your marriage in the last year, 3 years, 5 years? What has changed? Different. He's not doing the things that he used to do or love. What's taking the place of that?
Ooh. Ooh, ooh, ooh.
Hmm. I stopped asking my clients where their happiness is. I started to ask clients what's in the way of their happiness,
Wow. Wow.
because I don't think we've lost
Way.
it.
Woo.
I don't think we've lost it. I don't think it's gone. I think it's there. It's in us. You know, my shirt says "More Black Joy." I wore the shirt on purpose because we need more Black joy. I think that we deserve more Black joy more than anything else in the world, right? But we can't have it if we're prioritizing our lives in ways that don't make room for it. If we're prioritizing our lives in ways that don't serve it, And I get it. We're not always able to seek out joy. We're not always able to seek out, extreme happiness, maybe even excellence at times. Like sometimes those things are luxuries. For some of us, they're luxuries. For some of us, they're dreams. I get it. But the ability to dream is an aspect of joy. The ability to aspire is an aspect of joy. We should have that too, even if we don't have the things that we're dreaming about. We should be able to do these things. So I start to ask people, what happened to you? What happened in your life? Because something got in the way. Something is in the way. Something's in the way.
Woo! So asking this idea that do we really lose it, or is it just that something has gotten in the way, and being able to identify that is amazing. We have some comments here. We have Keith Scherer. Thank you so much for tuning in. He says, interesting. Yes. I'm just like, listen, I was on a panel with this king, and here I am expected to speak, and I just want to listen to him speak. So I'm just like, just keep talking. Marjorie Latour, tuning in from Port Charlotte, she says, James Baldwin, famous novelist, states that love takes off masks that we fear we cannot live without and know we cannot live within. How do we make vulnerability safe? How do we make it safe? How do we make it safe? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
I think that safety is humankind's great desire. When we look at, like, when you take something as simple as like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Y'all ever seen the triangle?
Woo! Yes.
Who knows,
yes.
or maybe don't know the triangle of needs? Self-actualization and all that kind of like woo big head stuff is at the top, right? But at the bottom, at the foundation, what you have is the basics, the very basics: health, food, safety, shelter. I think it's one of humankind's most grand desires to simply have lasting safety. To be in a situation and a circumstance where you don't have to look over your shoulder, you don't have to question, you don't have to wonder what the repercussions might be for the choices that you make or don't make, because some things aren't even fully in our control, right? But my thinking around safety is that I don't believe that there's a way to guarantee safety. I don't think there's a way to guarantee safety. But I actually think that that's a good thing. I think that the fact that we cannot guarantee safety is a good thing, because when we find ourselves in situations where we are safe, where we are able to find refuge, where we are able to share of ourselves and be our fullest self, we also recognize the blessing in it, because it doesn't turn up everywhere, and it doesn't turn up all the time. And I think that's important. I think that also fosters vulnerability. When you have encounters like that, you're able to say, damn, wow, that was a transformative experience. I'm not the same person that I was before I had that time. And I really, really hope that I have another time. Like, I really hope that the people around me, the people I love and care about, also have moments like that, I think that seeking vulnerability is as important as seeking safety is, because I think the two need each other to coexist. But I don't believe that there's a way to guarantee it, and I think that's by design.
I got a phone call the other day from someone who I actually have been a little concerned about. But when we're therapists and we have friends and family, they always think we're psychoanalyzing them, right? Like, I'm not psychoanalyzing you, just talk. But he lost someone very dear to his heart, and lost that person going on a year now. And feels like, that's triggering. Anniversaries are triggering, and it's bringing back a lot of that pain and a fear that maybe this idea that I was healing in a healthy way is now kind of challenging this idea that maybe I haven't even started the grieving process. This conversation that I have kind of falls right in line with someone who just posted this question. This is Felt Dog. Looks like he is watching this on YouTube. Says, how do Black men allow themselves to be vulnerable without being called weak?
Man, Felt Dog, shout out to you. I would hope that you're asking this question because you desire to be more vulnerable. The second half of the question is the part that gives me pause, though. Allowing yourself to be vulnerable without being called weak is a tough one because, truth be told, we don't have control over what the next person allows to leave their mouth. We also don't have control over how the next person chooses to interpret our ability. But my question to you in response, because I come with more questions than I do answers generally anyway, is why does them calling you weak mean as much as it does to you if that's not what you feel? People can call you weak all day long, but I don't think that means that you are, unless you choose to internalize that, take it in, and believe it. At the very least, that's a projection of their perception of their reality. That has nothing to do with you. Them calling you weak. What does have to do with you is your ability to step beyond whatever it is that they call you and to share the things that you maybe otherwise would not share, or to give of yourself in ways that would be hard. I think that's what matters more than anything else in that situation. That's how you measure yourself.
That's so good. Felt Dog, I hope that was a blessing to you. You can continue to ask whatever questions you like. On Facebook, we do have a pinned comment where you can actually click on that and join us right here live on stage with your question. And we were talking about this last week, this whole idea of removing the mask, and talked about self-actualization last week. I touched on it at the end of the show and really kind of dissected, and I did this during a women's conference just this past weekend, really dissected self-actualization and what that looks like, as practical as we can make it. And one of the things there was a couple, I've been reading articles on self-actualization for years, really trying to determine, is this a true destination? First of all, I don't believe in destinations. I believe in journeys. I don't know if there's many things or goals, right, that we actually like arrive. I think we just like attempt to arrive every day. It's just a journey. But in studying self-actualized individuals, whether we believe that's a true destination or doable or not, there are these common ways that they think and these common practices that they engage in that I love to study. And one of these mindsets that I'd like to highlight today is having little to no regard for the opinions of others. Little to no regard for the opinions of others, and it causes them to be set free from so many things. Is that practical? Is that doable? Because as we're talking about men and mental health, that would mean that if we can remove this high regard for the opinions of others, I would only imagine that it would cause more men to say, I'm not well. I can't do this. I don't know the answer, wife. I don't know the answer, kids. I don't know how this is going to work. Or just being vulnerable and being safe in that vulnerability, doing what they need to do to get the help that they need. Obviously, we're therapists, so we both subscribe to the power of therapy. Can we get people to a place where they have little to no regard for the opinions of others? How realistic is that? And is there a roadmap to that?
I don't think it's realistic that we get anyone to any specific place, first of all, especially as therapists. It's not a job. My job is not to carry you anywhere.
Say it
Anyway.
again. Say it again.
Mm-mm. Sorry, y'all.
He's not
For
supposed to
everybody,
work. You're supposed to work therapy. You work therapy, but go ahead.
for everybody that's watching, sorry. Not my job to pick you up and carry you. It's not my job to take you. It's not my job to make you do anything. It's my job to challenge your beliefs. It's my job to question your thoughts. It's my job to process and unpack your actions, the actions of others, and the different actions that have played upon you in your life in various ways, and looking at what that means for you or what you want it to mean for you. But it's not my job to take you anywhere. So that's why I said ultimately it really boils down to the choice of the individual, whether or not they're going to take steps, they're going to do the work in order to be vulnerable, in order to show up in these what we would consider emotionally laborious ways, right? And that's okay. Like I think that is something that we should leave up to people. However, that's only one piece of the. That's we can throw it on men and say, yeah, man, you got to be more vulnerable. Speak more. Let your man beat your chest and talk. Let your truth be known. Right? What do you have to be so afraid of? You're a big, tough guy, right? When your job can be impacted, when your family can be impacted, when your life can be stolen from you based on what you let roll out of your mouth, it stops being so much about a big tough guy and starts being more about how am I going to make it home tonight? How am I going to maintain life in a way that makes sense to me beyond the next 30 minutes, beyond the next hour, until the end of my work shift, along this 3-hour train ride home? That's what it becomes. So it's not so much about men just showing up and opening their mouths and letting all the beans spill out. We have to create a social climate, and that means all of us, regardless of age, gender, sexuality, religion, whatever. It's all of us. And I'm going to speak specifically to the Black community right now. I don't know who is online, who is tuning in. But as far as Black folk and people of color are concerned, we got to do better at creating a community of care that is authentic, not one that's performative, not one that is built and constructed quickly for the sake of a man or a few men to open their mouths and blabble, but constructed with intention. I'm talking brick and mortar, solid, built up fortress for men to show up and be safe in, to not be judged, to not be ridiculed, and when I say to not be judged, I mean judged with a harsh eye. I'm not saying not to judge with discernment, because we still need to be held accountable for things, and accountability.
Come on.
So I'm not saying don't show up with no judgment. I'm saying show up with peace. Show up with judgment that is edifying, judgment that makes sense. Show up in ways that says, I love you in action, as opposed to just words or just thoughts. Because we need it all.
Well, we just dropped the mic right there. That was so awesome. Felt Dog says, thanks a million.
Thanks a million. You're welcome, brother. I hope it helps.
That was awesome. That was awesome. Any other questions? Feel free to ask your questions in the comments. You can also join us live on stage. Adejare is our guest expert for today. He came in to just support this campaign that we've had from March to remove the mask and really get to the heart of the matter. You know, we define mask wearing, this will be the last, and I'm going to let you go. We define mask wearing as hiding our truth. Just hiding our truth. And the things that we hide our truth behind is what we've identified as the mask for for the purpose of setting people free.
Mm-hmm.
Just some last thoughts before you go, Adejare, if you can address our community. We're going to be closing out the month next week and closing out this remove this mask, this mass, MASS mask, MASK removal, right?
Yeah.
To set ourselves free, whether that's realistic or not. I choose to believe that it is because I had to do it and it was so free to do that. Felt so freeing to do that. Just some last words to empower our community before you go.
Wow. Okay. Shout out to sis. What was her name? Marjorie.
Oh
Shout out to
yeah. Let me get that on the screen again.
yeah, for bringing that Baldwin quote in here. Baldwin, I wouldn't say I idolize him, but I hold him in very high regard. In all the things that he has done and the ways in which he has shown up for his community. Yeah, he's pretty high up there. So shout out to you for including that and bringing that up. Wow, last words. I hope and pray that we as a community really do get together and work to find wellness, because it ain't gonna be some of us. Like, we're not gonna get there with some of us. That ain't the way that's not the way that this works. And furthermore, that's not who we are inherently as people, right? Like, we are melanated people. We come from the motherland continent. We are of the stock of the original man. Our existence is communal. Our existence depends on one another. And so therefore, leaving someone to their own devices, leaving someone to isolation, it couldn't be a recipe for success. My prayer is that we do get together. My prayer is that we do circle up. We do put our heads together. All hearts and minds on a similar accord, so that we're able to really create a place for ourselves, for us to be vulnerable, for us to feel safe, for us to be able to show up and have more joy, right? Because we need more Black joy. Like, the world is most beautiful when we smile. So we should smile more. And we should do what it takes to smile more. Yeah.
Do what it takes to smile more.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Do what it takes to smile more.
In a world where Black people are being stolen away for no reason at all, why not? Why not smile more? Why not do what you want to do? Why not chase the dream? Why not fill out the application? Why not go back to that school? Why not jump on that airplane? Why not do the things? Do the things. Do the things. Because the reality is, there are people that were here yesterday that are not today. A lot of them look like us. An overwhelming amount of them look like us. If not because of the medical complex, it's because of the prison industrial complex. But gone is gone. And once time is lost, it's always lost.
Ooh.
I'm talking to myself.
Woo! And me. Once time is lost, it's always lost. Did you guys hear that? Once time is lost, it's always lost. Live life as if failure was not an option. Guys, I did not know that Adejare was going to give me the day off, y'all. I didn't know. I was just, I could barely speak. This was so amazing. So amazing. I cannot wait for our listeners on the I Am Beautiful 365 platform to eat this. This is just so amazing. Dawn Alexander, she says yes to what you said. Once time is lost, it's always lost. And she says tomorrow is not guaranteed. Do it today and do it now. Awesome. Thank you, Dawn, for tuning in to this week's Ask Schellie Show. If you would let me know, go into the private chat, King, and just let me know what your social media platforms are. That way I can highlight that in the banner so our listeners can see how they can connect with you. And while he does that, I think it just came through. Oh, all right. You're on IG and Twitter. You're not on Facebook? You don't like us?
I don't have a business page on Facebook. It's just my personal page on Facebook.
Okay, perfect. Guys,
Yeah.
I'm putting it right now. I'm going to highlight it just so that you're able to see it.
I will say this. If you add me on Facebook and I don't know you, I'm probably not going to add you back. So send me a message. Yeah. Just
send a message. All right. So this is how you can reach him. This is our guest expert. This is contact information at the TJ Therapist IG. That's for IG and Twitter. Let me do that again. So that's at the TJ Therapist. And that is how you can find him on Instagram and Twitter. He also provided his website, and I'm going to post that right now. Make sure you take it down, follow, connect with him. If you have a family member that you are having concerns about and want to connect with our guest expert as a therapist, www.thetjtherapist.com. Are you doing telehealth right now?
I am doing exclusively telehealth right now in the state of Florida. My website kind of talks about all of the types of therapy I do, the different styles that I integrate. Talks about why I've done it. I have a bio, I have a CV, I have my full CV on there if you want to know all of the background information. And I also have links to my books that are on my website as well. So if you're interested in poetry, like reading poetry, want to read poetry that's written by a Black man, it's there. I have two books, one called In Silence, the other one called Getting Through, that I wrote during finishing up my master's degree. So those are both on there for purchase as well.
All right. Tell us about the books real quick. Give us a 30-second summary on each one.
So In Silence is a very personal compilation of poems that I had written across like the time span of maybe like 12 years. All of the poems in both books are originally written by me and only. My second book, Getting Through, is an ode to everyone that is struggling a different girls bumbling through. I'm just trying to get through. That's what the people are. They're about struggle. They're about disappointment. They're about heartbreak. They're about love. They're about sacrifice. They're about loss and grief, and all of the ways in which grief is anything but a straight line. And so, if you find yourself in a place where maybe you want to relate to, maybe you need, an idea to get off of your chest, free yourself from, maybe you can get lost in either of the two books. Yeah.
Awesome. I don't know how else to thank you, with the exception of a big hug when it's safe to do so. And also sending you that nice bottle of cab. I'm going to send you it's not just going to be like any bottle. It's going to be a nice bottle for giving us your time. And I know how precious time is. And for you to give us your Tuesday afternoon and pour out into our community the way that you did, that's the least that I can do. Thank you so much. I pray for just God's favor to continue to rain on you, open doors, book after book. What you touch turns to gold. Living life like failure is not an option. Living life with Ephesians 3 verses 19 and 20 just etched on your back. God reminds us that he desires to bless us beyond what we could ever imagine or think. So I just pray for open doors, divine connections, people just stroking checks, and your gift just continuing to make room for you. So continue to thrive, continue to push forward. Great is your reward. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Awesome. Wow. Well, woo! Thank you to all of you who have tuned into the Ask Schellie Show. I want to close by just highlighting just a few things just a few thoughts that I wanted to make sure that was said for this writer, this woman that was writing in for her husband. For those of you who are tuning in, this is definitely a replay that you want to make sure you watch. This is a show that needs to be shared over and over and over again. I was so full today. I understood when we're talking about, the wellness of men, I understood that this needed to be a show where I just kind of took a couple of steps back and allowed an amazing man to pour out into other amazing men. To allow a king to pour out to our king. So I'm so grateful for his yes. Couple of things. So this is a woman who wrote in, for those of you who weren't tuned in, a woman writes in, she's concerned about her husband. She believes he's depressed. And she says that when she tries to connect with him and ask him like what's going on, he gets annoyed, really wanting some direction. She specifically geared her or directed her question to our guest speaker. But I want to make sure that I highlight these very quick nuggets. I often get women who come in for therapy because they don't know how to help the man that they love. Whether it's depression and whether it's anxiety, whether he's lost or whether he's, grieving and not allowing him to be vulnerable enough in the marriage. So many, but it happens very often. This question came at such a great time because we knew that we were going to have Adejare on the show. However, I get these types of questions a lot. To the point where, again, women will physically come in and say, I just need help because I want to be able to help the man that I love. So coming from that perspective, a woman who's writing in and saying, this is a man that I love and I want to be able to help him. I just have a couple of things to say. And I hope these thoughts are connected because I had many of them and knew that I was going to have very little time to share. And if there's anybody that is that hears this and feels like I want to know more about that, I want to show specifically on this, then I would be happy to highlight this with more specificity. So number one, we as women, again, I'm coming from the perspective of women that are saying, please help me to help the man that I love. We have to cause honesty to be safe. We really, really do. I mean, we do ourselves a disservice, women, when we are saying, tell me the truth, be honest, and then you are not evidencing your ability to handle the truth in an effective and edifying, positive way, right? And so we have to cause honesty to be safe in order for someone else to feel safe in being honest and open about their thoughts and their emotions. And so while I can go into that for about another 60 minutes, I will leave it right here. Cause honesty to be safe. When we're taking what was told to us and we're using that as weapons 5 days later or a few months later, you're using that as weapons in an argument, and then you're still expecting the same level of openness and honesty, you're not going to get it. We have to cause honesty to be safe, and we have to be honest with ourselves about how we had some type of personal responsibility in injuring that. The second, lean more into the concern than the frustration. Gosh, I have so much to say, but I'm gonna keep it flowing, okay? Lean more into the concern than the frustration. Because a lot of times when women finally come to me and they end up in my office, they are also frustrated. It's like the concern has now become like just straight frustration. He's not doing this. He's not doing that. He's gaming all day. We our family's in shambles. He's not doing what he needs to do. And this is specifically for women who are saying, I think my husband is depressed or something is not right. He's not executing, not leading. He's not the same, right? And coming in like, I don't know what else to do. Lean more into the concern than the frustration. Because when we start leaning more into the frustration, I think that it becomes less effective, and you take away the power that you have in being more strategic about really addressing the root of the issue. When we lean more into our concern, it kind of goes back to what Adejare was saying, like asking the question, what happened to you? What happens to you? You know, he's not doing the things that he used to love. What replaced that? And what was the barrier to that? I'm just repeating some of the things that Adejare said. This was our guest expert earlier, for those of you who weren't on. Lean more into the concern than the frustration. It's much more effective, and it will help you to be more compassionate and empathetic about what's going on. Number 3, this is a perfect example of why it's important to be intentional about intimacy. So important that men and women, those who are in relationship with each other, are being intentional about maximizing intimacy. And I'm not just talking about intimacy that causes great sex and enhances sexual gratification, but intimacy across the board. We talked about it in all of February, those cold zones, those warm zones that help in the hot zone, because that intimacy, that attachment, and that bonding, it promotes safety. It becomes, our brains respond, right, to intimacy in such a way that releases these hormones that cause us to trust and be safe. Hormones that literally that cause us to feel safe, to be able to trust, to give trust and receive trust. But when we are not being intentional about intimacy and prioritizing your relationship and pouring out and having those moments, those conversations of care, that eye, verbal, and skin contact, and giving yourself that place and space to talk about fulfillment and purpose and fear, and doing that together. When you are not intentional about being intimate, you really injure your marriage and your connection in so many different ways. So when people are coming in like, there's something she's not telling me, or there's something that he's not telling me, immediately I'm hearing a lack of intimacy. Number 4, we've talked about this before, when we see things in loved ones and we need to have courageous conversations about the things that we see, be careful that you're not using words or diagnosing the issue. I think Adejare said it. He kind of mentioned it, like, you're calling it depression. It's important that we say what we see and try not to use labels and try not to diagnose your loved one. Just say what you see. When you are at a place where you're really concerned, you're leaning into that concern, you really want to help, you really want to be of support, say what it is you see, those observations, those changes in behaviors, changes in demeanors, changing in mood, changing the way they're interacting with others, changing in the frequency of social and leisure and recreational activities. Say what you see, and say it with specificity. Be very specific. Say what you see, and stay away from words and diagnoses when you're doing so. It may get to a point, number 5, where you need to communicate with trusted family and friends. When it's really getting to that point, because we talked about suicide earlier and suicide rates and how it differs between men and women. When it's getting to that place where that concern is rising, and this has been happening over a period of time, it may be time for you to communicate with his trusted family and friends, because when it's time to deliver that message and have that courageous conversation, you want to assure that the person who's the messenger is someone who is the safest person to do so for the person that you love. So when you start having these conversations with trusted family and friends, again, leaning into the concern, because you can do that just to vent, right? You can start connecting with family and friends and disguising it as concern, but using that as an opportunity to vent, to release frustration, and to castrate your husband or your loved one, right? We want to make sure that when you are communicating with trusted family and friends, you're leaning into that concern and you're wanting to draw a community that can really provide support for what you are seeing that is so concerning. Number 6, I think it's important to provide information to expose the issues, right? The things that you are concerned about, great articles or case studies, you want to normalize some of the things that you're seeing. I think using influencers are, really help with that. I know for myself, I don't always do this, but there are times where individuals feel so unsafe that I use as an opportunity to educate on other individuals who have the same concerns or the same experiences, who have overcome or are overcoming. I think it's important to hear that. So we kind of normalize a person's experience so they're not feeling like this is unsafe or feeling like I'm the only one in this world that feels this way, right? But also doing it in a way that still places importance on their experience too, because we don't want the person to go all the way to the other extreme and feeling like, well, this is a normal thing, so I'm not going to do anything about it. Right. And so providing that information, I think, is very, very powerful. Again, doing it in a very careful way, making sure that the messenger is actually someone that the person that you have the concern about can receive from. That's very important as well. But that information is powerful. I remember a specific loved one where I didn't want to use names or labels, but definitely had some amazing information about influencers who are overcoming symptoms of bipolar mood disorder. And that was very, very helpful in finding out the different therapeutic interventions that are out there, learning about telehealth and feeling safety and being able to have therapy in the comfort of their own home, especially during this pandemic. I think providing those resources are important. If this is a person that really has a heart for influencers, I think you can use their stories as a way to help and provide more information and resources. I think that we all have the personal responsibility to be experts, especially in the areas that we struggle with. That's a perfect opportunity to become an expert. When you're struggling in a certain area, it's an opportunity for growth. And so the more resources we have, the more we know about answers, the way that others have address those concerns, the strategic plans, those therapeutic interventions, or what have you, whatever steps were taken to address and overcome those obstacles. I think it's important to use that as a way to empower the person that you're concerned about in taking action. Number 7, I call this a safe taste. When people will call and say, I have this concern about a family member, or I have this concern about my aunt, my husband, whatever, I say, there's a lot of therapists out there that provide free consultations. It's an opportunity to take a safe test of what therapy may look like. Consultations are not therapy. Let me say that again. Consultations are not therapy, right? But just connecting with a provider or connecting with a professional in a safe space, right? It's still safe. It's still confidential. I haven't committed to the process. I'm just going to sit and talk for about 15 to 30 minutes. I think a safe taste is a really good way for people to think and feel like, you know what? I kind of liked how that felt in those 15 to 20 minutes or those 15 to 30 minutes. And I think that I can do the same. And so looking for those opportunities for consultations and connecting and insisting and connecting your loved one with those resources is very helpful. And always offer your support and make sure that you're doing it in a very present way, to not offer your support and not really be there. Like you offer your support, but you haven't released all your frustration. And so you really can't be supportive and like overly frustrated at the same time. I guess you can find a balance in that. But to offer your support in a really authentic and present way is important as well. When we have loved ones that we have concerns about, it's important to do your part and not just assume that it's going to go away. Take your power, do what you need to do, have that courageous conversation. It's important to have that courageous conversation. You never know, even if the person has turned you down, even if the person gets annoyed with your questions, understand that we all have this internal drive to live well. No matter how depressed you are, it's there. And so with consistency, we can continue to tap into that internal drive that we each have to live well and to overcome our emotional injury. Don't worry about the frustration. Sometimes the people that we are closest to get the lashing out on, right? So this is a wife that's saying, every time I ask, I get, he gets annoyed. It's okay. The annoyance is okay. I pray resilience over you so that you can see the importance of focusing on the real heart of the matter and not allowing yourself to be distracted by his response to you trying to be present and supportive in what he's going through. I truly hope that this was helpful. Let me go to comments to make sure that I haven't missed anything. Oh, Adejare said that for those who want to connect with him or have any specific questions, that they can actually email him. So I'll make sure that I put his email address in the comment section for anyone who wants to email him directly. I have Tatsi Tina. She says, good point. Do not diagnose, communicate in a different way. It could be hard to do sometimes, especially if your loved one is in denial. Absolutely. And we know that the first stage in healing is exposure. That's when there's no other way. There's no way to deny it. It's in your face. And now we are called to action once that revelation has happened. There will always, with true revelation, it will always be followed by true revolution. So when that exposure comes and we are exposed to the truth and we start to kind of entertain what's being said by our loved ones, it's an amazing thing. But we got to make sure that we are able to find ways to overcome the annoyance, the frustration of the people that we love, their agitation and their irritability. Because once we walk away, like, you know what, I'm tired of asking him. I'm just going to do me. I'm just going to do my life. Because every time I ask him, I get this attitude and I'm done. Don't get done. You have the power to overcome that irritability and that resistance. That resistance is only saying, if I can put into words, that resistance is, I don't feel safe. That's what that resistance is. So if we can focus on that alliance and that safety and the intimacy that births that, that's more effective than just walking away. Our loved ones need us. We should never ignore the things or the observations and the concerns that we have. We should be empowered to have those courageous conversations and give them the support that they need to remove their masks. Once again, I want to thank each and every one of you for tuning into the Ask Schellie Show. For any questions, feel free to email me at info@askschellie.com. You can also email info@askschellie.com if you heard something today and feel like, I think I may need additional support. My practice currently is full, but we always help in connecting individuals with amazing therapists within this community and beyond. So if that is you, feel free to email info@askschellie.com. Submit your questions, intimacy, relationships, conflict, work, career, whatever it is, to info@askschellie.com. I'm doing an open forum next week on all questions. It could be love, sex, relationships, mental health, non-mental health related, wellness, non-wellness, you have it. I'm going to have some other therapists tag teaming with me with all of your questions. So assure that you send your most challenging questions to info@askschellie.com. You can visit me at www.askschellie.com. That's where you can book me as a speaker. That's where you can connect with me for consultations, www.askschellie.com. And of course, you can subscribe to my YouTube channel, Ask Schellie. That would definitely be a blessing. For those of you who are tuning in, your share is a blessing. You never know whose line of sight or line of hearing that this recording would fall in. So do not take your share lightly. It can be empowering and the answer that someone else needs. I go live every week, every Tuesday here on Facebook at 12 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, and Thursdays on the I Am Beautiful 365 Facebook page. I do appreciate your follows and your support. It's all about each one, teach one. All about each one, teach one, and being very intentional about our wellness, being very intentional about our wellness, understanding that there are needs that we have, right? There are certain needs that we have that only we can meet. Again, there are certain needs that we have that only we can meet. So we need to stop placing the responsibility for those needs on others. For example, the responsibility to be happy is yours. And the minute you outsource that to someone else, you start to engage in this never-ending process of trying to be happy and filling void that can only be filled by you. And that's what this show is about, teaching very practical ways that people can be their own emotional intelligence expert, taking life by the horns, and really living your life in a way that is aligned with the things that you desire. Words manifest, behaviors attract. So the way that we behave can attract either favorable life outcomes or unfavorable life outcomes. And the choice is yours. Once again, thank you so much for tuning in to this week's Ask Schellie Show. In all that you do, be great and do great things. God bless you.